to be able to run. I mean, I don't think Donald Trump is an option at all. And so we got to have somebody who runs against him. Joe Biden was not looking good for the campaign. I don't even know if he could have governed well for the next 4 years. Campaigning and governing are very different things. You got to be able to campaign and be successful to be able to govern. So that was the first priority. I think he probably would have been able to govern fine for a while. I don't even know if he could have made it 4 years, to be honest with you. But he was struggling. But the can't he really was struggling for campaigning. You've got to show energy. You got to show that you're in it. You can't look like an old guy who no longer has it, trying to show that you've still got it. That looks even worse. And I think that's kind of where he was ending up. Um, so I feel more relieved to have a candidate. I feel even more relieved that we've got a good, solid candidate, I think, who will do a good job. And I think with a good fight from here to November, Kamala Harris will be our next president. Yeah, I mean, I think the what we're seeing is the normal, traditional way that political scientists have understood this process for the last 50 years. Um, Ever since there was a change in sort of convention rules and primary rules and those sorts of things after the disaster of the Democratic Convention 1968 in Chicago. Now we're seeing what we traditionally describe as the party deciding. The party is deciding who the nominee is. When you have donors and elites start signaling to each other what they're thinking, and they all start to coalesce, what we call a collective action problem, then ultimately you're gonna start either seeing the public jump onto that bandwagon if the public wasn't driving it to start with. In my sense is that the public was driving this to start with. The poll numbers weren't good, but what triggered all of it at the party level is the donors and the elites started sort of signaling to each other through, I'm not going to support Biden anymore right now. I'm going to shift this over to state, to House and Senate seats and state level races. And when you see a significant number of those beginning to happen, you see the party sort of coalesce around a general idea that Biden should no longer be the nominee. I think a lot of political scientists actually made a difference in this one by suggesting to everyone in the party that having some sort of brokered convention would be a disaster. You need the convention to introduce your candidate, to get behind the candidate, to push the candidate's agenda, and to talk about the big problems here, which are Donald Trump. You don't need the convention to be a massive fight. And that seems to be what's happening. The party, you're seeing all the members of the party. You're going to see the rank and file go first, primarily, right? And that's what we're seeing. We will eventually see, the big leaders, Pelosi. I haven't checked the news in the last bit, but Pelosi, Jeffries, Obama, even everybody was saying, well, Obama didn't endorse her. Well, he didn't endorse her because I think he and everybody else wants this to be a sort of grassroots movement to provide legitimacy to Harris as the candidate. And he can't do it if he's trying to press it from the top. So Obama, Pelosi, Jeffries, all of these people are not going to endorse until the end. And so you're seeing the rank and file indoors. But the big thing that you're seeing is, I think, I mean, it's been 24 hours now, right? And they've raised almost $90 million in small donations. $90 million in 24 hours. That's an enormous amount of money. Yeah, this is an instance of the party deciding. The parties, political parties, as we understand them in our current system, are pretty weak in a lot of ways. They can't really control candidates. They can't really control policy agenda that much. But they still have a significant role to play in choosing and coordinating the members to decide who the candidate's going to be. And we're seeing that work out right now. So the parties, this is one of the few real powers that parties still have over who the candidate's going to be. Something you said earlier, I think, is right, which is the president is the head of a branch of government that is enormous. It is the largest branch of government that we have in terms of personnel, in terms of institutions. It is just enormous, the executive branch of government, by far bigger than the other two branches. So, yes, the president is just one, the vice president makes two, but the reality is, I mean, you have, almost 3 million active duty military personnel underneath them. Just think about that. Almost, 3 million people, right? In one part of this branch of government. So, even, yeah, my guess is most of them are at one point or another. So, yeah, but I think it's a job that requires you to be able to coordinate, to have a vision, to be able to push legislative agendas and so forth. You don't micromanage all the things that happen in the executive branch. That's not a president's job. You have a lot of people helping you do those sorts of things, and so I think that's important. And I think she'll do fine. Exists in Greek organizations at a lot of institutions, but the Black sororities and fraternities provide a level of a mediating institution that helps get jobs, it helps economically, it provides a measure of support that really needs to exist in the Black community because of its historically oppressed state. And I think that's important. So when I level critiques of Greek organizations, I always try to point out that I think that they function better and they function more efficiently and purposefully in the Black community than they do in the white community. And yeah, and I think that's important. It's not just a place to make friends, it's a place that helps survival. And that's why you see a lot of, this is something that took me a while to figure out. You see a lot of students join sororities and fraternities in their last year, sometimes their last semester of college. And I'm like, why didn't you do this earlier? The point is to have those sorts of connections going out the door, because that's where you're really going to need them. And if you couldn't afford to pay the dues, you would be left out while you were in college, but you need to learn how to pay the dues walking out the door. So I can't claim to know a whole lot more about it than that. I've never been a member of a Greek organization, a sorority or fraternity. So yeah, beyond that, I don't really know. As someone who's just observing what happens on my campus, I think it's interesting that we're about to have a president, hopefully have a president who's yeah, also well connected with the sisterhood.
To Kamala Harris, member of a sorority, member of a group of women who have worked together, who train each other, who help each other in dealing with a oppressive, uh, what what's the term that we use for uh, ins- ins- institutional racism, right? Throughout, they've been
Yeah.
dealing with it. They know how to deal with it. They know how to support one another. And they're, so what I'm saying is he's not going to be fighting, Trump is not going to be dealing with somebody who doesn't know how to fight. He's not going to be dealing with somebody with a thin skin. He's going to be dealing with somebody who I'm not really sure he's ready for. And I saw a thing about his choice for J.D. Vance. Now that Kamala Harris is the opponent, I think that might not have been a good choice for him too, because J.D. Vance is completely anti-abortion, right? He's like a nut as far as not in appearance, but in policy with MAGA. And so like they're doubling down on MAGA with that. If Trump had picked somebody who was like a moderate, that the other Republicans might have been able to live with a little better, but he didn't do that. He went all the way to the right. And so I'm thinking that they may be double thinking that choice. What do you think about all that?
You mean are you suggesting that he's gonna dump Vance and go with somebody else?
Well, I wouldn't put it past him, but only because he's really crazy. But if he wasn't really crazy, I'd say hell no, no, he's not going to do that. But this is Donald Trump. I'm not suggesting that. What I'm saying is that I don't think he would have picked Vance had he known that. I think they were pretty sure that Biden was going to do what he said and stick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think JD Vance is a good pick at all for any reason. He doesn't help the ticket. I'm not sure he hurts it too much. He doesn't help it too much, but uh, I mean, at the end of the day, that ticket succeeds or fails because of Donald Trump. So it's a vice presidential picks are they're a bit difficult to understand. There are people who study this, obviously. There's scholars who study vice presidential picks. That's really all they do. It's very interesting sort of subgroup of political scientists. But the conclusions, I think, generally are that vice presidential picks really reflect on people's understanding of the person who made the choice, right? They don't really help in the polling. They don't really help you that much in the states. We know this to be true, but the reality is they reflect more on the candidate who makes the choice, the presidential candidate who makes the choice. That's what they do.
I have an argument against that.
So when Trump makes the choice of JD Vance, that says a whole lot more about Trump and who Trump is than it does anything else. Vance Vance seems to be an empty vessel. He's going to do whatever it takes to get himself into power. And he's made the choice to go this direction. And we'll see how that plays out for him. Harris, on the other hand, is going to have to make a choice. I mean, I think she can make a choice that will help her in the campaign, do the legwork of the campaign, get the message out of the campaign. I mean, she's a bit behind, but at the end of the day, a good choice will help her with the workload. Should it be? I mean, there's all kinds of options here for her. There's a lot of people talking about Andy Beshear down in Kentucky, Gretchen Whitmer up in Michigan, Shapiro in Pennsylvania. I think those are all strong candidates. There are other members of cabinet. Buttigieg is obviously somebody who's got a real future in the party. But the reality is that Kamala Harris is the one that's going to make this ticket work. And she has to make a good choice here. Vice presidential picks can really hurt you. they don't have a whole lot of upside in that they're not going to help you as much as they can hurt you. So you can't make a really bad choice. The worst decision we've seen probably in the last 20 years is 2008 when John McCain chose Sarah Palin for his choice, and everybody was just that was kind of it. He had to make a decent choice to get him into the campaign, and he made a choice that was about as bad as it possibly could be. And he just wasn't ready. The Republican Party didn't like him; they didn't like her, and so yeah, that's kind of the way that it went. All right, so that's my view generally.
Well, so on the VP pick, this last one, I mean, Kamala Harris is the VP. This is what I believe, from my understanding. It was a
She
deal with
is the vice
Jim
president.
Clyburn.
You're right about that.
But she became the vice president because he made a deal with Jim Clyburn to get the black vote. So and it was an effective maneuver that, if you ask me, Biden owes many elections to black voters in Delaware and the rest of it. He's aware of that, and I don't think that he. I would like to think, and of course, his behavior here lately has helped me believe that he's such a decent guy that he wouldn't put Kamala Harris in just because she's black and just because she's a woman. He would do it because he believes she's the right person for that job right now. And if he didn't think that, I think he would stay in. In order to convince him to drop down, they had to convince him, or he had to be convinced, that Kamala Harris was a suitable replacement. And I will trust his judgment on that.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is even without it wasn't that Clyburn gave Biden the vote in the general election. It's that Clyburn gave him the nomination, right? I mean, that's what you mean in that whole scenario back in 2020.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Biden was struggling. If you'll remember, his campaign was almost bankrupt. Yep. They had almost no money at the start of 2020 with the primary season. And I mean, everybody had basically discounting him. You can't win the presidency if you don't have any money. Jim Clyburn endorsed Biden, and that propelled Biden to victory. That's absolutely what happened. Now, in a general election, the black vote is going to be fairly united behind one candidate, anyways. Now, there were some fissures that seem to be developing here in the last couple of months behind Biden and the black community. Certainly, Biden and other communities of color. So, yeah, I think that's probably the case. Kamala Harris, I think, shores up a lot of those, right? And so those are not things that she's going to really naturally have to worry about a whole lot. So,
I would say that for the black vote, it's not a matter of talking black voters into voting Democratic. It's a matter of talking black voters into voting. And the thrust I've seen in all the voting, and I've done 2 cycles now so far, knocking on doors, calling people up. We didn't have a lot of conversation about who to vote for. Most of the conversation was, you have a right to vote and you need to exercise it. And I'm not going to say it was taken for granted that if you're knocking on black doors, you're going to get Democratic votes. It kind of is, but not when you're face to face talking to the voter. What you're telling that voter is that, do the right thing. So for Kamala Harris, now you have every soror, which is what the sisters call each other. They're going to be getting every relative off the couch, off their butt. Everybody, they're going to go vote. These women there's going to be a bigger black turnout, if you ask me, perhaps bigger than the black turnout for Barack Obama.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. This may this may now just boil down to, and I said this, I think when we talked last week, it may boil down to just sort of a standard get out the vote operation. So there aren't that many people left to convince. I mean, if you're still on the fence about Donald Trump, you need to have your head examined, I think. So it's yeah, it's really just about getting people out there. And I agree with you. There are some people who are convincible at this point. Harris may do that. I mean, a lot of people had concerns about Biden's age. There are other things to be concerned with Joe Biden. I mean, I have fairly serious concerns about our foreign policy. So I have some other concerns about some of his policies. But at the end of the day, it's not a hard choice between Biden or Trump. It wouldn't, and it's certainly not going to be a hard choice between Harris and Trump. But I think what you're pointing to is there's going to be a level of energy around a campaign, and that's what Biden had completely lost, is the energy. And yeah, when the party is not behind you, things will change, and that's what happened. So we're gonna get a level of energy. I keep telling students we'll have. She may come to our campus, Savannah State. Who knows? Jill Biden was at our campus in 2020, so it's possible that we'll get a major candidate. I mean, and that drums up a lot of energy. So I've had other students email me. I've had other students on social media contact me, and they're so excited about this. It's a big change when you up the energy level. Donations start coming in. You get people who are willing to work, canvas, and do all those sorts of things for you, and that makes a huge difference. That's how campaigns are run. The problem the Republican Party has is they don't have that infrastructure because Donald Trump doesn't put in the work to do those sorts of things, and so they are not going to have the get out the vote campaign that the Democrats are going to have. But what they will have is a voter suppression operation going. So, and I think that needs to be pointed out. Everybody needs to check and make sure that they actually are still registered to vote, because a lot of people, states have enacted laws that take people who have not been voting off the rolls if they were previously registered to vote. So you may need to re-register to vote. And so that's one of the suppression campaigns that's been going on. So.
Yeah, it's my understanding. You're talking about it's just the choice between um, the Democratic. You can make it about. I don't want to make it personal, right? Because I don't belong to a cult. I don't want to vote for Kamala Harris, for Miss America. It's not. It's not about. It's about. I want to vote for the policy she represents, and what the Democratic Party represents. So, at any rate, George Conway, Kellyanne Conway's ex-husband, famous political activist of the Lincoln Project, which I think a lot of people need to pay attention to, has started a super PAC about pointing out how Trump is mentally ill, and by whatever the book is that the psychiatrists use, that what is the name of that? It defines psychotic disorders, and there's a list of them, and Conway would be glad to read it to you. And there's like 9 things that a person that describe a sociopathic narcissist, and only 3 of them need to apply to any one individual. And Trump rings all 9 of those bells, and it's just so to educate people. Of course, I have to say, and I don't want to digress too much. I was 9 years old. I grew up in New York City, and so a long time ago, back when there was, of course, no color TV. There were only 3 major channels: ABC, NBC, CBS, and there were a few what they call UHF channels out there. So altogether, when I was a little kid, maybe we had 6 or 7 choices of things to watch. And so I was flipping through the channels on UHF, and I see a boxing ring with two guys wearing swimming trunks and boots. And one guy grabs a chair and hits the other one in the head and stomps his feet while he does it. I'm looking at it. I'm 9 years old, and I say, "Oh, this isn't real." And I turn the channel. A lot of people never turn the channel, and so world class wrestling and the Big Show and the Apprentice and Magic. I don't. They never did anything for me. Watching magicians. Forgive me. The Three Stooges used to upset me. When Mo hit Curly with the hammer, I swore he gave him a concussion. I never thought it was funny. I never thought those kinds of clownish things were amusing that seemed to amuse so many people at these Trump rallies. The clothes they wear, the things they say. It's just amazing to me. And now you got me going on that rant. Any rate, Conway's pointing out that Trump is, loony, 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 and you really, it's not much of a choice, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's not much of a choice. I don't know the benefit of trying to, talk about Trump as mentally ill at this point. I mean, maybe. He just seems like an old guy who has been raised in a certain sort of way so that he possesses all of these vices of his character, and those aren't going to go away ever. You don't get rid of vices when you're 78 years old. You're stuck with them. And when you're raised a certain sort of way, to view the world a certain sort of way, to view yourself a certain sort of way, that shapes your character. And you can either possess the virtues to pursue good things, or you possess the vices to pursue bad things. And Donald Trump possesses the vices, and that's what he pursues, and that's what he will always pursue. The Donald Trump is about himself. Now, whether you want to attach some sort of psychological disorder, that's a different game. An official sort of psychological. I mean, I think he probably has some issues. Most of us have some issues. I certainly do have some issues. So you have to learn how to work with those things within the context of one's own character, within the context of institutions. And Donald Trump doesn't have any bulwark against the vices that he has.
So let's
And
be clear.
if you throw in some sort of weird psychological disorder, there's not any bulwark in there at all either.
All right.
You've got to have, when you're doing something wrong and you're doing something bad, you need people to help you, because you don't know, right? And you need people to tell you. And in order for that to work, you've got to have an institution, some sort of community, right? Relationship, norms, all these sorts of things, to force you to understand that you've got to do the right thing here, that you've got to make a change. And he doesn't have any of those sorts of things. Everything in his entire life has been shaped to be about him. And he doesn't have anything holding him back. And so that's bad for him. It's really bad for him, because he is just from everything that I see, a pathetic human being. And at some level, he's pitiful. There's no way that he's happy. And so someone who has to crave that much public attention, it just seems like a nightmare scenario to constantly have to have that public attention lavished upon you for you to be happy, and to not freak out. So, yeah, I think one step back from, making some sort of an official diagnosis, which I'm not capable of doing. There is I think you were talking about the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Illness, right? But
Yeah.
Even if you step back from that, he has no friends, he has no institutions in his life who can tell him you're wrong about this and you're making bad decisions and you're hurting yourself and other people and you need to make a change. None of that exists in his life. And so when you have an institution hold him accountable, like the federal penal code or the penal code of New York or the penal code of Georgia, he doesn't know how to handle it. He's just a constant freak out and denial and all of those other sorts of things. But yeah, so I think there's always weird egos when you're talking about politicians. I mean, you got to have a fair amount of self-confidence to think that you can do those jobs. To be president of the United States, you got to have a very, very, very healthy ego. Sometimes that can hurt you more than it helps you. Your more humble ones will know how to control it. Sometimes they will take hits for being humble, but yeah. So I think that's a very complicated discussion. What presidents are really like, what their moral character is really like, what the psychological makeup of presidents is like. We don't want to have to rely on any of that for our politicians, though. You want to have institutions in place, laws in place, norms that are active and binding that would prevent politicians from being their worst selves. And Donald Trump went a long way to erode all of that. And so we've got a lot of work to do to sort of rebuild those sorts of things.
So I'm gonna measure Trump by the same measurement we did with Biden, in that we judged Biden. I did Biden because he didn't look like he could cut the mustard, did he? He was old and sick and tired. Doesn't look like Trump can cut the mustard because he's nuts. I mean, that's an observation that we're making that's completely objective. And I'll cut Donald Trump more slack than the criminal justice system cuts the average black criminal. Okay, and you know this to be true. I'm not saying it's from this podcast, because in my home and in the classroom, in our classroom, when I was a student of yours, when I said I didn't want to see Trump put in jail, everybody else went, ah, right? They freaked out. You freaked out, right? Didn't you? You remember that?
I remember. I think
Okay,
you're wrong
okay,
about that. I
okay,
still
okay,
think you're
okay.
wrong about that.
But here's the thing: the reason I don't want to see him in jail is because it's not about him. All right, as Dave Chappelle once said, he's not the hokey pokey. He's not what it's all about. I thought it was wonderful. Anyway, I worry more about the sin than the sinner. I don't care about Donald Trump. It's not
Yeah,
about
but
that.
if
I don't
your
want to see him
system
punished. I don't care if he had a bad childhood. I really don't, because how
But
many
if
people
you're,
have
it
had a
does,
bad
none of
childhood?
that matters. But if your system is not going to hold people accountable who try to destroy the system, then all you're really doing is encouraging people to do it again.
No,
And
accountability is
that's
relative.
why you have to do it. You're right. It's not about him. It's about preserving the rule of law. It's about preserving the norms of decency and law abidingness in the country. And if you don't execute the law, you're going to have people do it again. And we're seeing it 4 years later.
I didn't say not to execute the law. I said not to put him in jail.
No,
Punishments.
you have
Wait a
to put him
minute.
in
Wait a
jail.
minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Punishments. That's why they have judges, even though they have the holding mandatory sentences. The reason why they have judges is because of all the circumstances. It's not about Donald Trump. It's about us. It's about our nation. It's about how we feel about the flag. I don't want a shit stain like Donald Trump on my flag. I don't want anybody to say I've had a president in jail. I'd rather make him sit down, shut up, put him on probation, give him an ankle monitor, just get rid of him. I don't need to see, because has stained us enough.
That's a sign of a weak democracy that cannot protect itself from people like Donald Trump. I'm telling you, the healthy democracies will will prosecute their leaders and put them in jail if they break the law with a
That is
drop of the
so.
hat.
That's
And the
so.
unhealthy ones will not do that.
Come
It's
on, come
not
on.
about him.
Rich
Because it's
people
not
beat
about him,
jail every
you put
day.
him in jail. Huh?
At the scale, it's already messed up. I mean, it's obvious. We know black people go to jail, get convicted, get arrested, get searched way more than black people. And to pretend that the system is fair all of a sudden is, I don't know, a little, not on your part. It's a little hypocritical to do that. But
Nobody's
since
making
it,
the claim that the system's fair. We're talking about preserving the system.
it'll
The
be
system
in a
is going
system.
to entirely collapse if you do not put presidents who foment insurrection against the Capitol through violence to overthrow an election process for their own benefit in jail.
I don't know. We cut
You
Nixon's
have to put
nuts
them in
off.
jail.
Part They cut Nixon's nuts off. He sat down in San Clemente. You heard him maybe once or twice. He died in obscurity. It doesn't take much to take somebody that powerful and knock him down. And it's all I'm saying. I don't need the image. I don't. I mean, yeah, you're right. Okay, I agree with you that it's a sign of frailty, perhaps. That I don't want. That I'm. Don't tarnish my flag. Yeah, that's how I feel. Yeah, that's how I felt that way when I was in uniform and I would see people, or even when I did stuff that would disgrace that uniform. I felt so bad about it. And so uh, I don't need I don't need Trump punished so badly that happens. Trump is inconsequential. I just want him to go away.
Well, if you don't have real consequences for his actions, all you're doing is encouraging other people to come. And yeah, Trump may go away, but you'll have people lining up. You have to enforce the laws.
You got them anyway. We got laws everywhere, and you still got criminals. You still got people dealing drugs, shooting people. You got laws everywhere.
We're not
You're
talking
not going
about all
to.
that.
Well, I'm talking about you're not. You're trying.
We're talking about people at the very top trying to subvert the democratic order, the
Oh, that
Constitution.
never happened before, Professor Bowden. People at the top
never. It has happened before.
Sure.
It has happened before. Civil War, right? I mean, the Civil War, obviously. And there was a huge mistake, right? When the Civil War was over, you didn't properly deal with the people who caused that problem. Not dealt with the problem. Even to this very day, we haven't dealt with that problem.
Yeah,
So,
I agree, but John Wilkes Booth got them off the hook, right? John Wilkes Booth, that was the most successful assassination because it actually changed policy, it changed Reconstruction. But and you agree with that? I know we've talked about that. What's next for the DNC? What do they do now? Get out the vote? Suspend the VP choice for Harris. Play that game where everybody's wondering what she's going to do and everybody's focused and they're not looking anywhere else but at Kamala waving the shiny object. Hey, look what I got here, right?
Well, the first thing they're going to have to do is to put her in a position officially have to worry about being the nominee, right? It would be a mistake for her to declare a vice presidential running mate when the process is not clear as to how she's going to get to be the nominee. So if all of the delegates are going to pledge, they do a roll call vote. I mean, I think, when do we hit August? August is like next week, I guess.
Yeah, it's right.
So they'll do a roll call vote next week.
2 weeks.
Virtual roll call vote. And she should be the nominee at that point, and you have to move in the direction for the convention of having a VP pick so that the ticket is unified. I don't know if she does it before the convention or she waits till right before the convention or if she does it during the convention. I don't know. My guess is she won't wait that long. Because you need signs, you need all sorts of things going out. I mean, those things really matter, particularly in this day and age. when a lot of people are, wondering if their neighbors are willing to vote for Trump or not vote for Trump, yard signs can make a difference. So you want to have all those things ready to go as soon as possible. So I think I don't know. I think it's moving in the right direction. I think the Democratic Party is showing a lot of competence in dealing with the issue. It's a very unique situation, and they've handled it pretty well. I think very, very well. So hopefully, the money will keep rolling in. Hopefully, the big donors will start to move their money in the right direction. And yeah, I think that's the way that it goes. So
Well, I would like, so I just want to end by saying, recapping something I might have not made clear before about one of the reasons I think I don't know what kind of president Harris would make, but I have an idea what kind of campaigner she would make. She comes, like I said, this upper class black girls who are training to be ladies in college. They're smart, mean girls, and they're not a joke. My mama was AKA. She died in her own home in her own bed at age 97, had all her marbles. So Trump's in for a fight that he may not be ready for.
um, I I don't know anything about the inner workings, the moral development of Alpha Kappa Alpha members. But I will tell you that um, Black women on the whole are not a group that you want to mess with. Um, and they are very strong, and they have a lot of resolve. And I think that you're right about this. And yeah, I think that they will do everything that they can. I think all women, honestly, will do everything that they can for a woman on a major ticket not to get beaten by Donald Trump for a second time. Um, and I think they will do everything that they possibly can. So this is going to be a giant, giant turnout election, and I think women were already upset before all of this. Um, and I think now they have extra motivation to turn out against Donald Trump. And I think there'll be a huge gender gap in this election. So yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Jeffrey Bowden, and please say goodbye to our viewers.
Yeah, goodbye. Thank
Okay.
you. I enjoyed the conversation, Marlon, as always.
Thank you. All right, and thank you for tuning in. And if you like it, click like, and we'll see you next time.